I'm going to just start with a small intro. Ma- NASA's Perseverance rover landed on Mars on 18th of February, and it took almost 7 months traveling from the Earth to get there. Yeah, so pretty, very, very big achievement. And the reason why I wanted to show this was to just make a small statement where we say, of course, we human beings, yeah, humanity has made exceptional advances. So it's fantastic where we can get when we get our sides together and we want to get there. So, women today, even today, 40% of us are likely to suffer from severe injuries and car crashes because of safety features designed for men. I had no idea about this. A problem that can easily be solved. Women in rural parts of Africa spend 40 billion hours a year collecting water, things that are just absolutely unimaginable. And only 6 countries globally give women equal legal rights as men. I am an optimist and I feel if we can go to Mars, we can also build a gender balanced world. Yeah. Whether it's with community, it's with the policy, it's with good governance or with technology, there are ways of doing it. 19-year-old fantastic girl, Elisa Carson, an aspiring astronaut who is the only person who's attended every NASA space camp. And she's already positioning herself for a mission to Mars. And of course, for International Women's Day. And the topic this year for the campaign is Choose to Challenge. And the question is, how do we all help to forge a much more gender equal world? And of course, what we are doing today also in our network, or generally over the last year and a half, what we've been doing at Power Women as well, is supporting each other's achievements, raising awareness against bias, telling our stories, helping each other, and taking action, calling out and taking action for equality. Till the pandemic globally, women have stood at the front lines of this crisis as our healthcare heroes, as scientists, as educators and caregivers at home. And we've also seen that some of the most effective political leaders globally have been women. And this crisis has not only highlighted all the crucial contributions that we make to the society, but also all the uneven burdens that we carry on our shoulders. In recent years, we've fortunately now moving away from the mindset of looking at fixing the women, but more towards fixing cultures, fixing organizations, fixing homes and societies. There's also a lot of talk about men as allies with the whole campaign of he for she. And of course, the rise of women, our rise is not about the fall of men. We move ahead hand in hand. And the world today expects and demands inclusivity, but we've seen those statistics earlier. So, still a lot has to be done. And as Hillary Clinton famously said, women's rights are human rights. So, we launched this Power Women of India in 2019. The basic idea was, we had a passion for gender equality, for building community, to support each other. And over time, we have grown from strength to strength. We've launched our own personal development programs, such as the Personal Advisory Board, where we make sure that we support each other, we reach out, we ask if you're doing okay, we celebrate each other's wins. To be honest, if you ask me, my dream is that we will not need one day in a year to remember and celebrate our contribution as women. And I hope by the time my 8-year-old grows up, we would have achieved a gender balanced world. And every day, and any day could be Women's Day, right? So, with this, I would like to introduce our very special guest for today's event. I mean, her story is so powerful and very inspirational. We met her, I met her a few years back. There's so much talk about empathetic leadership today. And if you were to ask me if someone, women in tech, women on boards, empathetic leader, and she comes straight to my mind. Very down to earth, humble, brilliant, super talented, and hardworking. And I remember asking her even at that time, how do you do it all? And she's just gone ahead and flourished even more. And I'm so absolutely privileged to have her with us today to share her journey with all of us. And thank you so much, Sindhu, the Senior Vice President and Managing Director, SAP Labs India, for joining us. We are truly honored to have you with us. Sindhu is a board of director at Qualtrics International and also serves on the board of Titan. She is a member of the NASCOM Executive Council and is also in the steering committee of the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce. We believe in involving more women from the community. So I'm really also excited that two of our own stellar women are going to lead the event. So I'll hand over here to Devina Pasta, who's the head of digital innovation and cybersecurity at Siemens Mobility. And I felt that Devina has a nice parallel with Sindhu's story, having worked both in India and Germany. And she would lead the fireside chat. And after that, we will have the open Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box. Dr. Deepa Desai, who was a champion of gender equality and also an advisor at Loyal VC, she will be taking over from Devina later on. So thank you so much. I'll stop here.
Good. Maybe we can start off then. Thanks a lot, Simran, and welcome, Sindhu. Wow, I mean, impressive. Simran just mentioned your profile, and thanks a lot for joining us here. And I think, I mean, one of the things is we hear about the amazing things that you've done. And I think without passion and without drive, some of those things are tough to achieve. So what would you say are some of the things that you are most passionate about? What drives you?
Thank you. First of all, can you hear me or?
Yes, we can
Yeah,
hear
okay, great. I was trying my best to
you. Me
unmute
too.
myself. First of all, thanks so much, Simran, for having me here, and thank you for those kind words at the beginning. Very honored to be here among all of you power women, and also getting the opportunity to meet all of you and just kind of how do you say, build our sisterhood, right? That's which is so important. Yeah, to your question. Devina, yes. Uh, and I think it's probably also reflective for many of you who's on the call that we're all very fortunate to be part of a lifetime where you're seeing a lot of the life changing innovations happen pretty much every day, right? And I have to say, also being in the technology industry, this is something that is how do you say, totally exciting because at the yeah, so what I was saying is we are at a time where there's so many innovations happening that's taking place and also driving the world in a way that we can be better, faster, and making the whole world a more much convenient place to live in. However, when I have to say when I saw that statistics what Simran showed, I was right just uh, very appalled, right?
Mm,
And so I think it's also important that we are grateful to be part of a community which is definitely not reflective of those numbers, right? What we saw, but we have to make an attempt to, of course, change the status quo. So yes, I'm very proud to be a contributor in the technology industry in the different ways that I can do because it's really about having the opportunity in our hands to kind of reimagine the world, and that's something that I am very passionate about, Devina. I know that's the technology enthusiast in me speaking, but as a leader, right, I would say it's also super important that we focus on building a very diverse and an extremely inclusive tech community. And this also
mhm,
remains a top priority for me, right? Because we all know, I mean, it's proven there's the math behind it, there's the science behind it, there's a lot of with numbers proven that diversity makes all of us smarter, makes our organization smarter. Therefore, I think it's only makes sense that we foster also a very inclusive work environment where every individual, right, has, irrespective of what their background or what gender that they have or what kind of um, um, impressions that molded them into the person that they are still able to bring the best version of themselves and also be part of this technology revolution that we are all seeing happen around us, right? I mean, just if I just look at the things in India, right? I also moved back to India after a long span of 18 years in Germany. And if you just look at India, India produces the highest number of women graduates in STEM, approximately 43%. but it's only really 1/3 of this number make it to STEM jobs or stay in
Mm.
STEM for a significant period of time. So if you ask me, a lot of what I'm driven and passionate about is also to see how best we bridge that gap, right? And I'm very proud also to be part of an organization, SAP, where that vision of inclusivity and gender equality at work is front and center, right? And it's clear, right? I mean, I don't think I need to share it in this round, that if you have people from different backgrounds, and if you have a wider and a much deeper talent pool with different experiences, the outcomes are so much more better. And like I said, this is scientifically proven that workplace which is diverse really helps in the betterment of everybody. So that's something that I'm striving for. Very similar kind of when Simran started, I was like, wow, those numbers are pretty intense. And like I said, right, you asked me about what drives you and what are you passionate about. I think it's really at the end of the day, if we are able to have that inclusivity, have the kind of people at the table, and then you can drive the transformational power of technology in so many fields that where change is needed, right? Be it in climate change, be it in sustainability. I mean, just think about it, right? If you look at some of the natural disasters of the world, topics like climate change is clearly a reality, right? And for me, it's also how best can we use technology to address some of this and make it very concrete, even in the areas of or spheres of control that you are in. And I'm also a true believer that as tech companies, we can play a even more larger
Mhm.
role in kind of managing this and controlling this. This is also why at SAP, when we launched the Climate 21 program, and this is also a large part of the development that's happening right here at Labs in India as well, where we are looking at building analytical as well as transactional capabilities right into the core of our enterprise applications, giving a solution in the hands of our customers that not just tells them, hey, that's how your top line looks like or how your bottom line looks like, but really looking also at what we call as the green line, right? So that we give them everything in their hands to really minimize the overall greenhouse gas footprint that they produce. Things like that is really what drives me, right? Because that's the kind of change we'd like to see, and the power of technology can bring. So what drives me deep down, Devina, is really using technology for the good of society, but also for the good of the world, for the good of individuals.
That sounds great. Technology for positive change. And I think you made a very important point where you said diversity and technology. I do also believe technology without diversity is also dangerous, right? If you think about AI models, if you think about also what Simran mentioned earlier in terms of safety features being designed for men, and then when you think about technology and that being integrated into teams that are not diverse and maybe come up with solutions that are not diverse. So yeah, great point. And I think we spoke about, or Simran mentioned also some of your really amazing achievements, and we often talk about the good stories, but we know there are also tough moments as you get to the good parts of life. And I think for this group, it would also be interesting to hear what were some of the toughest moments for you, and how did you deal with them? And also, you said these are also maybe some changing moments that changed you also as a person.
Yeah, tough moments. There are so many of them, Devina. And, I mean, if somebody were to tell you that they never had any tough moments, I have a long list, right? So, um, but I think it's boils down to also how you look at those moments, and also how you kind of deal with it at that point in time. Because in reflection, some of those might not be as crazy it was at that point in time, right? And we're all in those. And like I said, right, if somebody were to tell you that that's not the case, then I'm sure they're not telling the complete picture. Yeah, tough moments, like I said, so many. What would I pick, right? If I just go back, it's also important that when you look at a challenge that comes your way, and many times as women, I think we also tend to um, even if it's like a career opportunity, or if it's a change where you're looking at moving out of your comfort zones, you can think of it as a challenge or as an opportunity. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is I was just reflecting back, back in this is going back in 2001. I still remember when it was my husband who was asked to move to Germany to take on a specific role back then. And I still remember how much of kind of almost was like the world came crashing down on me, right? Because I was like, hey, I don't speak the language. Yeah, I didn't speak any German back then, or I was not very comfortable about moving to a country where I wouldn't understand what's happening around me. And I still remember the kind of back then, my younger version of myself, right? Like pushing back against that move. And I can only tell you, and I remember back then that seemed like the most craziest thing that could happen to you, right? Because I was this young developer
Mm.
doing things which I really enjoyed, right? And part of a team which I really loved to be part of, settled into the whole culture that we had at Labs India, because back then Labs India was a um, nice small a family of what 200 of us. And here you had to kind of uproot yourself and kind of move into a place where I was not at all comfortable with. But I'm just telling you, right, it's really depends on how you deal with it. And I still remember making a both of us making a promise to ourselves, 2 years and then we're going to be back, right? That 2 years turned into a long 18 years, like I said, right? But if I just look back at the opportunities that gave me that move of moving out of my comfort zone and kind of looking at things differently, I can only be very grateful for that
Mm.
happening, right? And also the opportunity to be in several strategic roles, leadership roles. I won't go into all of the details there, but also such a great learning opportunity for me to understand a new culture, understand or learn a new language, make some amazing friends for life. So I think really challenges are part of our life, right? So and I think each and every one of us, depending on those tough spots or challenges, how you look at it, um, it's your mindset of how you go into it, how you deal with it, and kind of come out learning something from it, right? And of course, each challenge has a different spin to it depending on what
Mm.
it is. Or I can give you another example, right? Again, in the context of work, if I may, will. Where I was driving the program. I think in the introductions when we were speaking, I told you that I was driving the a program called the Intelligent Enterprise
Mhm.
Program. For those of you who are a little bit familiar with SAP, our strategy is all around how do we enable enterprises to turn into intelligent enterprises. And that's the strategic imperative of SAP. And this has been our focus all the way back in 2018, where I was asked to drive that for SAP. And I remember a lot of people telling me, "Oh my God, this is something that's going across four board areas, and it's going to be extremely tough navigating across that, because everybody had their, of course, individual." Goals and targets for the lines of business. And here you are trying to orchestrate end-to-end business processes
Mm.
across these lines of business, right? So you can kind of picture what that would mean. It's really about going into the business area, convincing them why they would have to do what they had to do, making sure that those investments were secure, and also showing the progress to the executive board, right? In a nutshell. And I still remember that taking that on would also meant I had to step out of my comfort zone of leading and driving the entire integration portfolio for SAP, which is what I was doing before that. Um, and I still remember, like I said, a lot of people saying, cautioning me against
Mm.
doing that. But yes, it was challenging. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Even you ask me 10 years from now, I'd say, yes, that was super challenging. But I mean, it was one of the most enriching experiences for me in terms of the amazing learning that I had in terms of working across our lines of business, across SAP, working across all the corporate functions, you name it, be it commercialization, be it go-to-market, be it partner ecosystem, be it HR, be it how do we drive incentivization models, all these things, right? Beautifully coming into play. And if I just look back now, right, I mean, this also enables me in my current role, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, long story short, challenges are always going to be there. I mean, that's part of the game, but it's really up to each and every one of us to kind of go in there, embrace it, and see it as a great learning opportunity. I mean, we will fail along the way. That's totally fine, but
Mm-hmm.
see it as a learning opportunity.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing. And I think I can relate to the point where you said you made a deal with your husband 2 years and then you moved back. I made a deal with myself 3 years and 9 years later, I'm still here. So those deals don't work, as we have learned. No, great. And Sindhu, you mentioned that you did start at SAP Labs and it was about 200 people. And now you're back there and it's 10,000, 11,000, I don't know the exact number, but a really large thousand number. And I would say you've taken on a leadership role right before COVID, as we were briefly discussing earlier. What would you say within a crisis like COVID are some of the key leadership aspects that you pull out from your, let's say, leadership basket? And also, what kind of a leader would your employees say? If I ask them, what kind of a leader is Sindhu? You could just share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have a few of my colleagues on the call, so you should have a chat.
Great.
No, no. Well, it's clear, right? Devina, COVID clearly changed the way the entire world works, right? So I think one thing which stands out for me is very clearly, if you look at what the pandemic has done, and actually it's great to be in a tech company in these times because uh, it's clearly accelerated the whole digital transformation of businesses, right? It's really it's no more a conversation where you're getting in. I know your question was slightly different, but still I want to call that out. It's actually so exciting because the conversations with customers are, hey, it's no more kind of a I'd like to transform myself digitally. No, it's like, can you help me right now, right? So
Right. Yeah.
it's exciting and it's super interesting, the kind of the leaps that customers are making, also to just make sure that they brace themselves for times like this, right? But from a leadership perspective, of course, it creates of course challenges. There's no doubt about it, especially if I just reflect back on the initial times. This is going back to March of 2020 when the
Mm-hmm.
lockdown started, and we were I have to say we were also lucky here in labs, SAP here in India, because we also, given the fact that we operate out of 180 locations worldwide, we also had a chance to reflect on how the others were dealing with it at our other locations, and seeing how that would what that would translate into for us. And for us, I mean, clearly, right, leaders had to rally a lot of the teams across India through these uncertain times. And main thing is that lines that we have between your personal space and your professional spaces are
Mm-hmm.
clearly blurring, right? This is, I think, applicable to everybody on this call. And there were, of course, challenging times for many of the, because many of the people were also directly impacted by the pandemic, right? So it becomes extremely important that you also think through what sticks as the strength of an organization in these times is the
Mm-hmm.
culture that you have invested in over a period of time, and that's what keeps us together, right? It's that strong culture of belonging to the organization that I think is really still keeping that high spirits among our colleagues. And I have to say, thanks to the support of every individual at Labs India, we were able to keep up. I mean, if I just look at also productivity numbers, right? I mean, of course, I'm sure many of you from organizations have also looked into how the productivity has gone up or gone down, depending on what it is. And across our 30,000 product engineers, this is across the world. Um, we have more than 9,000 here in India. Out of that 30,000, productivity has significantly gone up, right? Because why? Because all the teams went really up and above and beyond, kind of fulfilling their professional commitments. And that really played a very huge role in also boosting and keeping. I mean, now we are also if you just look at the other locations, some emerging out of the lockdown, some still in lockdown, we somewhere in between. There's no lockdown outside, but we're still working from home, at least more than 95% of us. And I think to your question, right, in times like this, it goes without saying that leaders need to be more empathetic and compassionate. And that is the core of what you have to bring to the table. And because that's what is needed at those times, because everybody knows, hey, they have all those delivery targets and what they need to work. But what is needed so much is to understand what people are going through, trying to manage between having your kids can't going to not being able to go to the school, and still having to orchestrate somehow between all these spheres that are now kind of interspersing with each other, right? So I think if you'd ask me, it's that connection with people, it's that deeper level of connections within the teams through compassion, a lot of collaboration, right? Because we clearly need to still foster that environment and build in a culture of trust and continue to promote loyalty. Because all through this time, as you can imagine, we still continue to also onboard a lot of our
True.
new employees, right? So who are now coming into this. I mean, you can think of it as a universe which has a clear culture and a very strong purpose driven culture, but you're also having a lot of new people joining us in virtually, right? And that means a lot of connection, a lot of empathy, a lot of collaboration, which I think is very or continues to be important. I mean, these are all, of course, elements that always are important, but particularly in these times, becomes front and center in terms of how you guide your decisions, right? And most importantly, also having a clear vision, I think, is super important in terms of how are we driving the larger goals for SAP, and having that as a clear kind of a compass for every single individual becomes super important, because people are always like, oh, okay, that's where we are heading towards. Yeah, these are few things that I think come to my mind, at least when you ask that question.
No, that's very well said, because as you said, a clear vision, and then support your teams with compassion and empathy. So that's great. And also what you mentioned in terms of personal and professional lives merging somehow, because we're all sitting at home working, having our kids, cats, dogs, and everyone else. And I think what I see is in my teams is that it also has brought at least some parts of the teams together closer, just because you're mixing the spheres. And also on the other hand, with global teams, there are parts, since we are Europe heavy in my teams, there are parts that are outside of Europe that actually say we feel like we're on an equal space now, because earlier they used to miss out on the in-person part of things, and now they say, well, we're all virtual, so we're all in the same environment. And then that was just an interesting feedback that I got. But yeah, no, great, thanks for that. And Simran also mentioned in the beginning in terms of your board positions, again, very impressive. And I do hope that in this audience, there are quite a few aspiring women who would like to be on boards in the future. So what would you say was your journey to a board position, or some advice that you could give women in the group that are aspiring for those levels?
Yeah, I get this question, to be honest, quite often, and I don't know if there is kind of a secret formula or something like that, or if I can handpick certain events that led me to this. But I'd rather say it's always a series of focused and concentrated efforts over your career, over the last 2 decades, that I've always focused on, right? I mean, it's a lot about consistency, it's diligence in what you do, and always making sure that you deliver on those end results, and not just with what is kind of expected, but really going above and beyond. And I think that's kind of always been my the way I've approached things. And I have to say that this has also helped me, if I just look back, and continues in my journey, right? And I think that's also the element of fun to it, which I think is so important, because you have to have fun doing what you do. And I think it's one thing led to another. For example, almost after 2 decades of of working across various technology areas, I think you also create a niche for yourself
Mhm.
as somebody who's standing for a particular topic, a particular area of focus, and you really bring that expertise across, or you're known in the industry, you're known in the ecosystem for somebody who brings those capability. Depends in whichever industry that can
Mhm.
be, right? It's built over a period of time. It's just not happening. At least very clearly, I can say that for myself. It just doesn't happen overnight, right? It's really about a lot of things that one adding to the other, right? So, like I said, transitioning through these multiple roles, I also got this opportunity to be on the NASCOM Executive Council. And if you ask me, very fortunate to be there, because you also get a chance to collaborate with some of the finest technology minds in the country here, right? And also have the chance to contribute back to the overall India's digital journey that's happening, or the innovation charter of India. And I say for all of you on the call, it's really look at what are where are those niches you want to create for yourself, and have a very razor focus on kind of the that picture or that end goal that you want to get to. And I think what has always driven me, and I told you at the beginning when you asked about what drives you and what do you clearly, right, it's this innate passion for technology and innovation, and how we can use technology to drive the change that we all are seeking for, I think has also led to these different roles I've played over the years. And just as also my role on the Titan board, just to call that out, completely different industry if you
Mhm.
ask me. And really tons of learning. I also happen to sit in a few of the board committees there, and it's also a lot of learning. But I guess the reason they asked me to be on their board is really to also help them in their technology strategy aspect
Mhm.
of their business, right? So they really, if you just look at Titan and kind of the way they've embraced technology to drive some of their businesses, their core business, be it in the watches or be it in their wearables. Phenomenal, right? It's really phenomenal. So yeah, long story short, from my experience, I can definitely say, first pick the area that you're truly deeply driven, right? Stick to that, create that niche, focus, and it's the really that consistency and diligence, and one thing will lead to another.
Thanks for that. Consistency is key, as you said, right? And forming the niche. And I think that's very good advice also for everyone here, because then you are thought of when there's a position open or when
Yeah,
there's an opportunity. Yeah, great. And Sindhu, I mean, you are a tech enthusiast, and of course, your passion for technology has taken you through the different steps in your career. Um, I think most of us know, and maybe I can say also from personal experience, that the high levels of tech companies are today, at least, still quite male dominated. What is just some thoughts that you might have, or some experiences that you would like to share with the audience here, where we probably have people also that are working in such environments that are probably male dominated?
yeah. Yeah, you're right, Devina. I mean, gender bias is still very much prevalent, whether we like it or not, right? Just also in our society, and irrespective of how hard we've tried over the last few decades, it's still there, right? I mean, we've not managed to completely eradicate it. However, if I'm a very optimistic person. The good news is that there is huge progress being made, right?
Mhm.
Huge progress. I mean, it's I think we can be very grateful to be in these times where a lot of the hard work has already, I mean, we've crossed that. It's the conversation where you can't just ignore it anymore, right? That, I mean,
Mhm.
there were also those times where people wouldn't even be comfortable having such conversations.
True.
That's all behind us, right? So there's a lot of progress that's happened. There's a lot of correction courses that's happened across organizations, across industries. And I, again, like I told at the beginning, right, very also fortunate to be in a technology company like SAP, where we've been clearly very much focused on this. We just had our second board member now joining us as of March 1st, Julia White, who joined us from Microsoft, actually, who's our second woman board member. We also have Sabina Bendek, who's our head of the people strategy, who's also on the board. So again, and it's not the first time for us. We had Jen Morgan, we had Adair
Mm-hmm.
Fox Martin. So I think we are absolutely setting the trend. There's no doubt about it. And I think gender imbalance, if you ask me, is sometimes also these misconceptions that are still there around us, right? That women professionals are. I mean, I'm not generalizing it, but of course there are these biases, if you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes just unconscious biases, right? That hey, they won't women won't be able to sustain the role that
Mm-hmm.
leadership demands, right? Um, I I think boils down to really how you would frame your thoughts, right? And if you already go in with that kind of filter of that's how everybody in the room is thinking, probably that's what's going to kind of uh, kind of lead the way you deal with things. But if you already, I mean, I just probably it's also the way I was brought up by my parents. I mean, I grew up with two older brothers. I mean, I didn't I was expected the same or sometimes even more than than my brothers, right? And the talk track at home has at the core of it has always been whatever you want to achieve, it has to be through hard work. And so it didn't really that whole conversation on gender or boy or girl didn't really happen at home, and maybe that's also kind of set the mindset of how I've kind of approached things. So even if I and many times it happens to all of us probably, right? You walk into a room and you have the entire room filled with men. Why should that kind of kind of how would you say uh, result in you still not doing your best, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'd say a lot of it depends on how your kind of frame of mind is. And I'm not saying that everybody kind of has the same boundary conditions under which you group.
Mm-hmm.
So think about, reflect also on your own biases that you set for yourself sometimes. Don't make yourself the victim, right? I always tell people don't do that. I mean, nobody's is kind of setting the boundaries for yourself in terms of how you think, right? So yeah, that's what I would say. um, to me, conversations have always been centered on talent and the contribution that an individual brings to the table, and never has been on in gender. And I have to say it's also great to be an organization where we take a lot of pride in creating that culture of inclusion. And I'm a strong believer of the fact that irrespective of whatever has shaped you, irrespective of what your personal choices or preferences or what color you like to wear, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter, right? As long as you bring your best to the table and are able to deliver, that's what matters. And that's kind of also how I functioned.
Very inspiring, very inspiring. Thanks for that. And I mean, if I, because we spoke about gender and we spoke about, let's say, a male dominated environment, I think we do probably have also in the audience a lot of dual career couples, maybe with kids, without. And there's this whole topic of, I call it life balance. I mean, I know we call it work life balance, but for me, work is a part of life, right? So let's look at life as the whole package. And how have you strived to achieve life balance? Because you've done some great things. As we learned, you have two daughters, nearly in their teens, one in their teens, and you've moved around. You've moved back to India. So how is it? What are just some, I don't know, snippets and sneak previews into your life that you can tell us about how you have achieved or strive to achieve balance?
Yeah, and I think, Devina, this question comes at the right time, particularly now, like we said, right, over the last year, we're all working from home, and this is kind of becoming the new normal, right? Where also, if I just look at a lot of the conversations that I've been having with people, this, like I mentioned, right, their professional, personal lives kind
Mm-hmm.
of interspersing with each other. And I guess this is also this case for dual career couples, like you said, right, who even many times have young kids, and you need to kind of also manage your time, right, between work and sometimes you need to support your a little one who says, hey, the internet is dropped, can somebody help me, right? All that's happening, and I'm sure a lot of you on the call can relate to it. Talking about my own personal experience, I have to again say I'm super blessed to have an extremely supportive partner, right, and extremely supportive family. And I guess it's important that we call out um, what that means, because
Mhm.
you always see probably the end result of all that support that's happening behind the scenes, right? And I think I absolutely can say that it's only been possible because I've had that kind of support. I mean, my husband helps me with so many things, right? I mean, around the house, be it with the girls. He's supported all important career decisions. I mean, there have been times where we've clearly said, okay, I had to travel, and the kids were still little, right? And of course, Murphy's law, the a day before your travel, of course, your
Fall
little one
sick.
falls ill, right? That's totally
Right.
normal. Yeah, but at those times, right, when you're just like, oh my God, what do I do now? I think it's so important to have that support in your partner, in your family, to give you that. Don't worry, you go do your thing. We'll take care of things, right? And that I think is such a blessing. And I can absolutely say that this has been kind of the backbone, if you may allow me to call it, and my family has been clearly that backbone, right? Um, yeah, so it's important. I mean, and again, people on the call who say, hey, I don't have that kind of, but look
Mhm.
around, right? Build that support system. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be your partner, or maybe
Absolutely.
for some reason it may not be, if you're staying far away from your family. Look at your friends, look at your colleagues at work. I'd say sometimes you don't need to take it all on yourself and just try to be a superwoman, right? Why would you do that? Ask for help, ask for support. I would even say, tell people, when I mentor a lot of people, I tell them, hey, build out that map of whom you would reach out to as for your support, right? And because many times you would have to lean on them. So and that's the reason we are all having this conversation. We are also building a support network here, right? And I think it's so important, irrespective of whether you have that within your family. If you have that, you're blessed, and it's great. Be very grateful for that, because it's an incredible source of strength. And But otherwise, look for your support system and learn to also ask for help.
Okay, thanks. I see that we are slowly running out of time, I think. So maybe I will ask maybe my last question, and then we open it up to the audience so they can also ask their questions. Michelle Obama famously said, you can't have it all, and not all at the same time as a woman. That's what she meant, really. And of course, what is have it all? I think it's different for each of us, what we define by it. But maybe if you could share, can we have it all? What is your view on it? And what are some sacrifices maybe that you have made along the way, or that you say that we need to make along the way when we're juggling all the different balls that society and we ourselves throw on our plate?
Yeah. I think this question, can women have it all, comes up, right? I would say, why not? Why not? But there's always a but to it. And it goes back to what I said earlier on. You can have it all if you really focus on also a very efficient management system that you use, and that can be in
Mhm.
your support system. It can be within your team. How you also sometimes learn to let go, right? Because you don't need to be on top of every 100 thing that's on your plate. You really need to be able to build that trust with people, where you're able to let go, be it trust in your personal sphere, professional sphere, doesn't matter. It's really about building that a culture of trust, where you can delegate, you can reach out to other experts for a specific area. And and if you are able to kind of work with that kind of efficient management across your spheres, I think absolutely you can have it all. And you talked about juggling between balls. I get reminded of this conversation I was having with the Johnny Ghosh on a similar question that came up in a conversation with, we had about 135 women in a closed room having this conversation, and this talk about always knowing, hey, as you're juggling the crystal ball and the rubber ball, because what it means is you always have, you have to decide every single day, right? I mean, you wake up in the morning and you know, okay, what are those areas where if I drop the ball, that will be a crystal ball that it's going to shatter, right? And so you're never going to do that, right? And where is the areas which fall into the rubber ball? And as long as you're able to kind of draw that picture for yourself, which is absolutely number one priority, you're not going to let that drop, be it your family or your little ones, whatever be it, right? In that context, every day could look different, of course. So make sure you're not dropping that crystal ball. Manage to juggle with the multiple rubber balls that we all have, right? So I guess that's also a little bit of if what I say to kind of build an analogy, because if you drop the rubber ball, you can come back and pick it up, and but drop the crystal ball, well, that's going to shatter, and it's not going to look good. Right? So many times this means when you gauge the opportunities and tasks that come your way, make sure that you also look at prioritizing, right, and manage them both professionally as well as personally. And like I said, really important, build that core set of people whom you can always reach out for help. I think that support system is be it in your partner or family, your team or the sisterhood, doesn't matter, but build it, because yes, one person alone definitely cannot do it, right? It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Sindhu. I think those are some really good tips for, I would say, daily life, and also for as we strive to, bring more gender balance, I would say, into the tech world and into the world overall. And with that, I would also like to open up to questions for the audience. I think, Dr. Deepa, you were going to then take us through this part of the session.
That is right. Thank you so much, Devina. And Sindhu, my God, there were so many inspiring pearls that you shared with us today. So thank you so much for that. And I'm sure that the audience have a lot of questions. I see one from Dr. Mandeep, and she would like to really know if you could share one of your real vulnerability, because that would really understand that how the real power woman took it to handle it.
Oh, there's many again, right? But I think a little bit what I would say, which is trying to be I like to have things as perfect as possible, right? And I told you, learn to let go. That's a process that I've worked with for myself as well. So even things like you see something on a slide and you just like, hey, this needs to be on that side. That I don't know, my very close set of friends say, is it like an OCD or right? And I think that's a little bit of need to have things in order, and that's a little bit of the thing that I'm working with myself.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common with women, because I think that we are multitasker, and so then we try to make sure that whatever we do, we are doing it perfectly. So well shared. Thanks, Sindhu. And probably maybe, I know that, they say very frequently that it's very lonely up there. So probably, one of the things that we'd like to know is that, do you have an inner circle? Like, I mean, Simran just spoke about the personal advisory boards that we have within, PWI has started that initiative, and, a lot of us are participating there, and we can see the power of it, where, you have a group of 5 to 6 women leaders with similar thinking and goals, and then you help each other. But I just wanted to understand that, do you have an inner circle, and what has been your experience in terms of having these advisory boards kind of a setup?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have definitely a lot of mentors whom I seek for support, and sometimes it's also a sounding board, if you may will, right? Where you're
Right.
not kind of judged or kind of put through a filter, but really you're looking for kind of honest feedback, right? And there are people that I rely on for that and for that kind of feedback. But I also want to raise a word of caution here, because I'll tell you from my own experience, right? Because sometimes you say, hey, you need to have and the reason why I'm saying that, it's not just about one or two, but I'd say have few more if possible, right? uh, the reason I'm saying that with the concrete example, back in, this was can't remember, it doesn't matter, it was several years back, and this very strong supporter slash mentor of mine, right? And would always kind of go in and discuss specific roles and certain opportunities that were coming my way with him. And I still remember a role that I was looking at several years back, and I was having this conversation where I just wanted a very um, clear kind of fact-based reasoning of why that role would be the right one or not. And very interestingly, I got the response, oh, that role is going to be super tough, given that given the kind of responsibility it brought. And just think about what it would mean from a work-life balance. Now, that's the last thing I expected to hear from that conversation, right? And I still remember going back, because that was, because what I was expecting to hear already was, yes, that's the role for you. It's the perfect time. Go for it. So what the kind of thoughts I still remember that day going home, and I was wondering, hey, if he would have said that if it was a man, because work-life balance, that was the last thing I wanted to hear, right? Or last thing even on my mind for that matter. But then in after several months, it was clear why actually he was pushing me away from the role, because another person who was much closer was in the inner circle, if you may will, of my mentor, or one of my mentors was also applying for that similar role. So the moral of the story is, don't just have one, because have many, because you want to make sure that you listen into the different perspectives, and not always take one to one the feedback that you would kind of receive from a mentor, right? Finally, it's also up to you to kind of look through it and to kind of take those calls, and what also go with, a little bit with what your gut says. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe take the feedback from everyone, but then you need to make your own decision, because you are in the best position to know yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Very
And
right. Very right.
what's going to work best for you, right?
That's true. And then we have two questions very nicely. I think they're somewhere connected. It's from Dina and also from NG. They say that, how do you overcome the fear of being rejected or being wrong? And then, of course, how do you bounce back from a failure? So, somewhere I feel, if that can be responded.
Yeah, of course. I mean, failures are a part and parcel of our journeys, right? And many times
Right.
we see the end result of things, and you should remember that that end result happened through a series of different experiences, be it success, be it also failure, be it learnings, all right? And so I would say look at both success and failure in kind of an impassionate way, because as long as you make sure that you're learning at any point in time, right? That's what matters. Don't see it as, hey, now I'm going to make my numbers, or whatever it is, that the KPIs that you're driving against, right? It's always, as long as you're having fun doing what you do, and as long as you're learning as you go, I think success and failure, it's all part of that journey. So I'd say, for whoever's asking that question, always look at things. Hey, am I walking out of this opportunity with something more, right, than what I came in with? If that's a new learning, or a new network of people that you now know within your organization or beyond, even if it does, even if you didn't meet all the KPIs that you had set for yourself, that's completely fine, because you're going to apply that into your future roles. No?
Very nicely said. That everything is a part of an experience which can be used in learning from your past experiences.
Yeah.
Right? So Simran, maybe probably I think Simran, we have time for just one more question.
Yes, let's make it the last one, and then we'll do the Mentimeter. Thank you.
All right. So, and this is something very interesting. That what would be your advice to people who are just young professionals who are entering their corporate life or professional life, and how can they make their journey much better? And this question is from Prashasti.
Yeah, so Prashapti, what I'd say is really be bold. There's nothing can really don't let anything stop you from what you want, right? Maybe it takes time to get there, but I'd say just go for it, do your thing. Make sure that you focus on the three things that I said, which is hard work, consistency, right, and staying true to whatever your purpose is, right? If it's about having fun with technology, being passionate about an area or niche that you've carved or you intend to carve for yourself, I'd always say use that, because hard work, commitment, and consistency never goes unrewarded, right? And it's just fulfilling in your journey, be it whatever way fulfillment means for you. It's definitely going to fulfill you and never going to pull you back. So make sure you do that, and you'll see that the hard work pays off.
Yeah. Be bold. That was very, very, very sound advice. And I think that that's not only for the beginners, but I think it should be for everyone. So